The 2010 Haiti earthquake was a catastrophic magnitude 7.0 MW earthquake, with an epicenter near the town of Léogâne, approximately 25 kilometers west of Port-au-Prince, Haiti's capital. The earthquake occurred at 16:53 local time on Tuesday, the 12th of January 2010. By the 24th of January, at least 52 aftershocks measuring 4.5 or greater had been recorded. An estimated 3 million people were affected by the quake. Death toll estimates range from 100,000 to about 160,000 to Haitian government figures from 220,000 to 316,000 that have been widely characterized as deliberately inflated by the Haitian government. The government of Haiti estimated that 250,000 residences and 30,000 commercial buildings had collapsed or were severely damaged. There has been a history of national debt, prejudicial trade policies by other countries, and foreign intervention into national affairs that contributed to the pre-existing poverty and poor housing conditions that exacerbated the death toll. The earthquake caused major damage in Port-au-Prince, Jacmel, and other settlements in the region. Notable landmark buildings were significantly damaged or destroyed, including the Presidential Palace, the National Assembly Building, the Port-au-Prince Cathedral, and the main jail. Among those killed were Archbishop of Port-au-Prince Joseph Sergemiat and opposition leader Misha Gaillard. The headquarters of the United Nations Stabilization Mission in Haiti, located in the capital, collapsed, killing many, including the mission's chief, capital.The. Many countries responded to appeals for humanitarian aid, pledging funds and dispatching rescue and medical teams, engineers and support personnel, communication systems, air, land, and sea transport facilities, hospitals, and electrical networks had been damaged by the earthquake, which hampered rescue and aid efforts. Confusion over who was in charge, air traffic congestion, and problems with prioritization of flights further complicated early relief work. Port-au-Prince's morgues were overwhelmed with tens of thousands of bodies. These had to be buried in mass graves, as rescues tailed off. Supplies, medical care and sanitation became priorities. Delays in aid distribution led to angry appeals from aid workers and survivors, and looting and sporadic violence were observed. On the 22nd of January, the United Nations noted that the emergency phase of the relief operation was drawing to a close, and on the following day the Haitian government officially called off the search for survivors. Background: the island of Hispaniola, shared by Haiti and the Dominican Republic, is seismically active and has a history of destructive earthquakes. During Haiti's time as a French colony, earthquakes were recorded by French historian Moreau de Saint-Émile. He described damage done by an earthquake in 1751, writing that only one masonry building had not collapsed in Port-au-Prince. He also read that the whole city collapsed in the 1770 Port-au-Prince earthquake. Cap Haitian, other towns in the north of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and the Sans Souci Palace were destroyed during an earthquake on the 7th of May 1842. A magnitude 8.0 earthquake struck the Dominican Republic and shook Haiti on the 4th of August 1946, producing a tsunami that killed 1,790 people and injured many others. Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, and is ranked 149th of 182 countries on the Human Development Index. The Australian government's travel advisory site had previously expressed concerns that Haitian emergency services would be unable to cope in the event of a major disaster, and the country is considered economically vulnerable by the Food and Agriculture Organization. Haiti is no stranger to natural disasters. In addition to earthquakes, it has been struck frequently by tropical cyclones, which have caused flooding and widespread damage. The most recent cyclones to hit the island before the earthquake were Tropical Storm Faye and Hurricanes Gustav, Hannah and Ike, all in the summer of 2008, causing nearly 800 deaths. Geology. The magnitude 7.0 MW earthquake occurred inland on the 12th of January 2010 at 16:53, approximately 25 kilometers WSW from Port-au-Prince at a depth of 13 kilometers on blind thrust faults associated with the Enriquillo Plantain Garden Fault system. There is no evidence of surface rupture, and based on seismological, geological and ground deformation data, it is thought that the earthquake did not involve significant lateral slip on the main Enriquillo fault. Strong shaking associated with intensity IX on the modified Mercalli scale was recorded in Port-au-Prince and its suburbs. It was also felt in several surrounding countries and regions, including Cuba, Jamaica, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, and the bordering Dominican Republic. According to estimates from the United States Geological Survey, approximately 3.5 million people lived in the area that experienced shaking intensity of mm7 to X, a range that can cause moderate to very heavy damage even to earthquake-resistant structures. Shaking damage was more severe than for other quakes of similar magnitude due to the shallow depth of the quake. The quake occurred in the vicinity of the northern boundary, where the Caribbean tectonic plate shifts eastwards by about 20 mm per year in relation to the North American plate. The strike-slip fault system in the region has two branches in Haiti: the Septentrional Oriente Fault in the north and the Enriquillo Plantain Garden Fault in the south. Both its location and focal mechanism suggested that the January 2010 quake was caused by a rupture of the Enriquillo Plantain Garden Fault, which had been locked for 250 years, gathering stress. However, a study published in May 2010 suggested that the rupture process may have involved slip on multiple blind thrust faults with only minor, deep, lateral slip along or near the main Enriquillo Plantain Garden Fault zone, suggesting that the event only partially relieved centuries of accumulated left lateral strain on a small part of the plate boundary system. The rupture was roughly 65 kilometers long with mean slip of 1.8 meters. Preliminary analysis of the slip distribution found amplitudes of up to about 4 meters using ground motion records from all over the world. A 2007 earthquake hazard study by C. Demetz and M. Wiggins Grandison noted that the Enriquillo Plantain Garden Fault zone could be at the end of its seismic cycle, and concluded that a worst-case forecast would involve a 7.2 MW earthquake, similar in size to the 1692 Jamaica earthquake. Paul Mann and a group including the 2006 study team presented a hazard assessment of the Enriquillo Plantain Garden Fault system to the 18th Caribbean Geologic Conference in March 2008. Noting the large strain, the team recommended high-priority historical geologic rupture studies, as the fault was fully locked and had recorded few earthquakes in the preceding 40 years. An article published in Haiti's Le Matin newspaper in September 2008 cited comments by geologist Patrick Charles to the effect that there was a high risk of major seismic activity in Port-au-Prince. Aftershocks. The United States Geological Survey recorded 8 aftershocks in the 2 hours after the main earthquake, with magnitudes between 4.3 and 5.9. Within the first 9 hours, 32 aftershocks of magnitude 4.2 or greater were recorded, 12 of which measured magnitude 5.0 or greater, and on the 24th of January USGS reported that there had been 52 aftershocks measuring 4.5 or greater since the 12th of January quake. On the 20th of January at 6:03 local time, the strongest aftershock since the earthquake, measuring magnitude 5.9 MW, struck Haiti. USGS reported its epicenter was about 56 kilometers WSW of Port-au-Prince, which would place it almost exactly under the coastal town of Petit-Go. A UN representative reported that the aftershock collapsed 7 buildings in the town. According to staff of the International Committee of the Red Cross, which had reached Petit-Go for the first time the day before the aftershock, the town was estimated to have lost 15% of its buildings, and was suffering the same shortages of supplies and medical care as the capital. Workers from the charity Save the Children reported hearing already weakened structures collapsing in Port-au-Prince, but most sources reported no further significant damage to infrastructure in the city. Further casualties are thought to have been minimal since people had been sleeping in the open. There are concerns that the 12th of January earthquake could be the beginning of a new long-term sequence. The whole region is fearful. Historical accounts, although not precise, suggest that there has been a sequence of quakes progressing westwards along the fault, starting with an earthquake in the Dominican Republic in 1751. Tsunami. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center issued a tsunami warning immediately after the initial quake, but quickly cancelled it. Nearly 2 weeks later, it was reported that the beach of the small fishing town of Petit Paradis was hit by a localized tsunami shortly after the earthquake, probably as a result of an underwater slide, and this was later confirmed by researchers. At least 3 people were swept out to sea by the wave and were reported dead. Witnesses told reporters that the sea first retreated and a very big wave followed rapidly, crashing ashore and sweeping boats and debris into the ocean. Damage to infrastructure, essential services. Amongst the widespread devastation and damage throughout Port-au-Prince and elsewhere, vital infrastructure necessary to respond to the disaster was severely damaged or destroyed. This included all hospitals in the capital, air, sea, and land transport facilities, and communication systems. The quake affected the 3 Médecins Sans Frontières medical facilities around Port-au-Prince, causing one to collapse completely. A hospital in Passionville, a wealthy suburb of Port-au-Prince, also collapsed, as did the St. Michel District Hospital in the southern town of Jacmel, which was the largest referral hospital in southeast Haiti. The quake seriously damaged the controlled tower at Toussaint-L'Ouverture International Airport. Damage to the Port-au-Prince seaport rendered the harbor unusable for immediate rescue operations. Its container crane subsided severely at an angle because of weak foundations. Gonaives seaport in northern Haiti remained operational. Roads were blocked with road debris of the surfaces broken. The main road linking Port-au-Prince with Jacmel remained blocked 10 days after the earthquake, hampering delivery of aid to Jacmel. When asked why the road had not been opened, Hazem El-Zian, head of the Southeast Division of the UN World Food Programme, said that, "We ask the same questions to the people in charge. They promise rapid response. To be honest, I don't know why it hasn't been done. I can only think that the priority must be somewhere else." There was considerable damage to communications infrastructure. The public telephone system was not available, and 2 of Haiti's largest cellular telephone providers, Digicel and Comcel Haiti, both reported that the services had been affected by the earthquake. Fiber optic connectivity was also disrupted. According to Reporters Sans Frontières, Radio Lumière, which broadcasts out of Port-au-Prince and reaches 90% of Haiti, was initially knocked off the air, but it was able to resume broadcasting across most of its network within a week. According to RSF, some 20 of about 50 stations that were active in the capital region prior to the earthquake were back on air a week after the quake. General infrastructure. In February 2010, Prime Minister Jean-Max Bellerive estimated that 250,000 residences and 30,000 commercial buildings were severely damaged and needed to be demolished. The deputy mayor of Léogâne reported that 90% of the town's buildings had been destroyed. Many government and public buildings were damaged or destroyed, including the Palace of Justice, the National Assembly, the Supreme Court and Port-au-Prince Cathedral. The National Palace was severely damaged, though President René Préval and his wife Elizabeth Delatour Préval escaped injury. The prison Civil de Port-au-Prince was also destroyed, allowing around 4,000 inmates to escape. Most of Port-au-Prince's municipal buildings were destroyed or heavily damaged, including the City Hall, which was described by the Washington Post as a skeletal hulk of concrete and stucco, sagging grotesquely to the left. Port-au-Prince had no municipal petrol reserves and few city officials had working mobile phones before the earthquake, complicating communications and transportation. Minister of Education Joël Jean-Pierre stated that the education system had totally collapsed. About half the nation's schools and the three main universities in Port-au-Prince were affected. More than 1,300 schools and 50 healthcare facilities were destroyed. The earthquake also destroyed a nursing school in the capital and severely damaged the country's primary midwifery school. The Haitian art world suffered great losses. Artworks were destroyed, and museums and art galleries were extensively damaged. Among them Port-au-Prince's main art museum, Centre d'Art, Collège Saint-Pierre and Holy Trinity Cathedral. The headquarters of the United Nations Stabilization Mission in Haiti at Christopher Hotel and offices of the World Bank were destroyed. The building housing the offices of Citibank in Port-au-Prince collapsed, killing 5 employees. The clothing industry, which accounts for 2/3 of Haiti's exports, reported structural damage at manufacturing facilities. The quake created a landslide dam on the Rivière de Grande-Go. As of February 2010, the water level was low, but engineer Yves Gattaro believed the dam could collapse during the rainy season, which would flood Grande-Go 12 kilometers downstream. Conditions in the aftermath. In the nights following the earthquake, many people in Haiti slept in the streets, on pavements, in their cars, or in makeshift shanty towns, either because their houses had been destroyed, or they feared standing structures would not withstand aftershocks. Construction standards are low in Haiti. The country has no building codes. Engineers have stated that it is unlikely many buildings would have stood through any kind of disaster. Structures are often raised wherever they can fit. Some buildings were built on slopes with insufficient foundations or steel supports. A representative of Catholic Relief Services has estimated that about 2 million Haitians lived as squatters on land they did not own. The country also suffered from shortages of fuel and potable water even before the disaster. President Préval and government ministers used police headquarters near the Toussaint-L'Ouverture International Airport as the new base of operations. Although their effectiveness was extremely limited, several parliamentarians were still trapped in the presidential palace, and offices and records had been destroyed. Some high-ranking government workers lost family members, or had to tend to wounded relatives. Although the president and his remaining cabinet met with UN planners each day, there remained confusion as to who was in charge, and no single group had organized relief efforts as of the 16th of January. The government handed over control of the airport to the United States to hasten and ease flight operations, which had been hampered by the damage to the air traffic control tower. Almost immediately, Port-au-Prince's morgue facilities were overwhelmed. By the 14th of January, 1,000 bodies had been placed on the streets and pavements. Government crews made trucks to collect thousands more, burying them in mass graves. In the heat and humidity, corpses buried in rubble began to decompose and smell. Matti Goldstein, head of the Israeli ZAKA International Rescue Unit delegation to Haiti, described the situation as Shabbat from hell. Everywhere, the acrid smell of bodies hangs in the air. It's just like the stories we are told of the Holocaust. Thousands of bodies everywhere. You have to understand that the situation is true madness, and the more time passes, there are more and more bodies, in numbers that cannot be grasped. It is beyond comprehension. Mayor Jean-Yves Jason said that officials argued for hours about what to do with the volume of corpses. The government buried many in mass graves. Some above-ground tombs were forced open so bodies could be stacked inside, and others were burned. Mass graves were dug in a large field outside the settlement of Titanien, north of the capital. Tens of thousands of bodies were reported as having been brought to the site by a dump truck and buried in trenches dug by earth movers. Max Beauvoir, a Vodou priest, protested the lack of dignity in mass burials, stating, "It is not in our culture to bury people in such a fashion. It is desecration." Towns in the Eastern Dominican Republic began preparing for tens of thousands of refugees, and by the 16th of January hospitals close to the border had been filled to capacity with Haitians. Some began reporting having expended stocks of critical medical supplies such as antibiotics by the 17th of January. The border was reinforced by Dominican soldiers, and the government of the Dominican Republic asserted that all Haitians who crossed the border for medical assistance would be allowed to stay only temporarily. A local governor stated, "We have a great desire and we will do everything humanly possible to help Haitian families, but we have our limitations with respect to food and medicine. We need the helping hand of other countries in the area." Slow distribution of resources in the days after the earthquake resulted in sporadic violence, with looting reported. There were also accounts of looters wounded or killed by vigilantes and neighborhoods that had constructed their own roadblock barricades. Dr. Evan Leon of Partners in Health, working at the General Hospital in Port-au-Prince, claimed that misinformation and overblown reports of violence had hampered the delivery of aid and medical services. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton acknowledged the problems and said Americans should not be deterred from supporting the relief effort by upsetting scenes such as those of looting. Lt. Gen. P.K. Keane, Deputy Commander of U.S. Southern Command, however, announced that despite the stories of looting and violence, there was less violent crime in Port-au-Prince after the earthquake than before. In many neighborhoods, singing could be heard through the night, and groups of men coordinated to act as security as groups of women attempted to take care of food and hygiene necessities. During the days following the earthquake, hundreds were seen marching through the streets in peaceful processions, singing and clapping. The earthquake caused an urgent need for outside rescuers to communicate with Haitians whose main or only language is Haitian Creole. As a result, a mobile translation program to translate between English and Haitian Creole had to be written quickly. Casualties. The earthquake struck in the most populated area of the country. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies estimated that as many as 3 million people had been affected by the quake. In mid-February 2010, the Haitian government reported the death toll to have reached 230,000. However, an investigation by Radio Netherlands has questioned the official death toll, reporting an estimate of 92,000 deaths as being a more realistic figure. On the first anniversary of the earthquake, the 12th of January 2011, Haitian Prime Minister Jean-Max Bellerive said the death toll from the quake was more than 316,000, raising the figures from previous estimates. Several experts have questioned the validity of the death toll numbers. Anthony Panner, Professor Emeritus in Environmental History at Northeastern University, warned that casualty estimates could only be a guesstimate, and Belgian disaster response expert Claude de Villedegoyet noted that round numbers are a sure sign that nobody knows. Edmund Mulet, UN Assistant Secretary General for Peacekeeping Operations, said, "I do not think we will ever know what the death toll is from this earthquake," while the director of the Haitian Red Cross, Jean-Pierre Guitou, noted that his organization had not had the time to count bodies, as the focus had been on the treatment of survivors. While the vast majority of casualties were Haitian civilians, the dead included aid workers, embassy staff, foreign tourists, and a number of public figures, including Archbishop of Port-au-Prince Monsignor Joseph Serge Miat, aid workers, île-de-France, and officials in the Haitian government, including opposition leader Michel Gaillard. Also killed were a number of well-known Haitian musicians and sports figures, including 30 members of the Fédération Haitienne de Football. At least 85 United Nations personnel working with MANUSDAH were killed, among them the mission chief H.E.A.Q.D.I.N.R.B., his deputy, Luis Carlos da Costa, and police commissioner Douglas Coates. Around 200 guests were killed in the collapse of the Hotel Montana in Port-au-Prince. On the 31st of May 2011, an unreleased draft report based on a survey commissioned by the U.S. Agency for International Development challenged the Haiti earthquake death toll and several damage estimates. The unpublished report put the death toll between 46,000 and 85,000 and put the number of displaced persons at 895,000, of which only 375,000 remained in temporary shelters. The unreleased report which compiled its figures from a door-to-door survey, was done by Washington consulting firm LTL Strategies. A U.S. State Department spokesperson said the report had inconsistencies and would not be released until they were resolved. As of January 2012, USAID has not released the report and states at its website that 1.5 million people were displaced, of which 550,000 remain without permanent shelter. The most reliable academic estimate of the number of earthquake casualties in Haiti within 6 weeks of the earthquake appears to be the 160,000 estimate in a 2010 University of Michigan study.